here is how you find real happiness. True happiness. Right? Everything you thought was true, everything that you thought would bring you happiness, everything you thought was wrong, right? Jesus, Beatitudes, the original, drop the mic here. That's what he's doing. Right? These things, these statements literally flip everything we thought we knew on its head. Right? And he took that flip, when it flips on its head, he took that flip and he said, what you think is success, what you think is the top of the ladder, the top of achievement, is actually the bottom. That's what he's saying. First, right, he says the spiritually bankrupt are happy. Right? Blessed are what? The poor in spirit. Right? Well, what Jesus is saying here is happy are you, fortunate are you, disciple, blessed are you when you discover that you're spiritually busted, that you're broke. This is Jesus saying, listen, the pride's got to drop. The ego has to go. You've got to say, I need God. I cannot do this on my own. You're broke. The poor in spirit are those who know they have sinned, have missed the mark with their life, and know that they have shot their arrow away from the bullseye, and that they need God. They need God to get back on target. I think it's important to note that here in the ancient Greeks, they have two different words for the working poor, right? Those that are striving and working, and they just maybe aren't there yet in society, but then the truly down-stricken, like the truly poor. There's two different words. And the word for the truly poor here indicates that someone must beg for everything they have to get. Everything. They're at the mercy of everyone and everything. Jesus used that word for truly poor here at the beginning of these Beatitudes. He knows that every blessing we get as a disciple of his, as someone who's forging a lifelong reliance on God, everything we get, every hope of happiness we have comes from God. And he wants us to know that. Right? Spurgeon, the great Victorian preacher, he put it like this. He says, a ladder, if it is to be of any use, must have its first step near the ground, or feeble climbers will never be able to mount. It would have been a grievous discouragement to struggling faith if the first blessing had been given to the pure in heart. Right? To that excellence, the young beginner makes no claim, while to poverty of the spirit he can reach without going beyond his mind. We're poor. We're broke. First rung on the ladder, though, we can all say. We can all take a step on that. Right? The very first rung is blessed are the poor in spirit, because we can all start there if we're willing to let pride go. If we're willing to let ego go. We can all take that first step of saying, yeah, I'm not perfect. I messed up. I need God. All right, you hear me all the time say sin. Sin is an archery term. And sin means you missed the mark. You didn't hit the bullseye. We can all say that. No matter how good we think we are, we can all say, hey, I missed the bullseye at one point in my life. Right? So we can all take that first step of saying, yeah, I'm not perfect, I messed up, I need God. We can take that step and we can get to the second step, the second rung on the ladder, which is those who weep are happy. Right? Blessed are they that mourn, it says. Okay, so now we got to take a step back and we're like, Jesus, man, first I got to be busted. I got to be broke, right? Poor. And now I have to weep. All right, we're getting off to a pretty rough sermon, right? We're not off to a great start working toward happiness here, right? The beatitude. But listen, Foundry Church. Listen, if we truly believe that we are busted, we will weep. We'll cry, right? When we recognize that we need God, it should start to do something on the inside of us. It will break our heart. It will tear us in two. It will cause pain. It will cause us to weep. It will cause us sorrow. The word for mourn here, to mourn here, used here, the word that's used here is the strongest word for mourning in the original language, right? And one commentary put it like this: it is the word used for the mourning of the dead, for the passionate lament for one who was loved. It's the mourning we would have over the death of our spouse, over the death of our child. We deep in our soul know that we are busted and that we're broke, that first rung of the ladder. We will mourn with our whole being because we are dead. We're broke, we're busted, we know that. And so we're going to mourn. And Jesus says, once you're there, I'll comfort you. I'll comfort you. You see, Jesus says this grief, this weeping, it's just a path to my comfort. But you must go through it. Right? And then that brings you up another rung on the ladder. Right? He says those who turn over the controls to God are happy. Right? Because it said, blessed are the meek. Right? When you hear that word meek, don't think of a weak, wimpy. I struggled to come up with an analogy here, but the best I could do was like Barney Fife in the Andy Griffith shows. Right? Don't think of Barney Fife, a weak or wimpy kind of person. Right? That's not what meek means at all. Meek is actually a word of strength. Right? Meek meant to bridle wild horses. It meant to put strength and power under control. Right? I think of General Mattis, the Marine general. Right? He's calm, he's collective, he's cool, he's level-headed, but he also says, I have a plan to kill everybody in the room at any given time, right? He's meek, right? Because he's powerful, but he has it under control. Right? That's me. Jesus is saying, once you discover that you're poor in spirit, that you're broke, you're dead, it does something in your heart, you weep, right? And then it comes time to God, for him to say, God, for us to say, God, I need you to control my life. I need you to harness me. I need to forge my life on you. And this is entirely countercultural, isn't it? I mean, and today when things seem to be falling apart, what is the first thing we do? I'm your pastor. I can tell you what we do, all right? We tend to run to ourselves. We do. I do. We all do. We tend to run to ourselves. We look inward. Right? I start to go over my schedule and make sure everything's like perfect and make sure I have the right routines. And that's what I do. Or we look inward and we run to some self-help book. Right? That's why they're so popular. We always think that self is the answer to all of our problems. It's our truth, our identity, our wants. Sometimes when the world around us is falling apart, Foundry, we should give up control. Right? We should give up control to someone who knows how to handle these situations before we end up covered in you-know-what. Right? Because here's the truth, Foundry. Self is unreliable. It just is. Self is unreliable. Self is undependable. Self cannot be trusted. Self cannot accomplish anything eternal. Right? Look at this. Self cannot muster up the transformational power needed to live the kind of countercultural life that Jesus wants us to live. Self can't live an abundant, aggressive, adventurous life that we're called to live. A life of happiness. Right? If self really could help, then Jesus would have just given us a gift card to Barnes & Noble and say, go get a book, get a latte, have a nice life. But it cannot help. So Jesus said, blessed are you when you recognize that self can't help and you say, okay, God, I'm going to become meek. I'm going to become power, but under control, your control. And I'm going to turn the controls, the bridle, over to you. I'm going to forge my life on you. And to do that, when we do that, we take another step up that rung on the ladder, further up the ladder, right? And that next rung is this. Those who hunger after God are satisfied. Because what did we read, right? Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness. Right? Once you've given your control over to God, your appetite, it starts to change. You no longer hunger for thirst and power. You no longer hunger and thirst for your political party to get into power. You no longer hunger and thirst for more money or more possessions. You no longer hunger and thirst that your opinions would be the most influential in your world. Instead, we hunger and we thirst, Foundry, for the righteousness of God, the God that we forge our life on. You hunger and you thirst for His word. You hunger and you thirst for His will to be done in all aspects of your life. You hunger and you thirst for His kingdom to come. You hunger and you thirst for the things of God now and for all of eternity. And as you hunger and as you thirst for these things of God, you're going to get filled because you've discovered that those other things, this is the beauty of it, those other things that you thought were going to fill you, they just leave you unsatisfied now. You don't even want them now. You don't even like lust after them, but the things of God, they fill you. They fill you up. They leave you satisfied, and then they leave you digging for more. And once you're full, then the things that come out of you, they start to change. Right? You get energy, and you get on purpose, and you're on that adventure and that abundant life, and so things start to change that are coming out of you. And you move up that next rung on the ladder, and it reads like this: the happy are merciful. I mean, what's the first thing that comes out of your life once you reach this step of the ladder? Mercy. Mercy. Right? And don't miss this, right? This is all rooted in how, as disciples of Jesus who make disciples of Jesus, we are happy. And it's all rooted in the fact that we are receiving mercy and we're giving mercy. Right? The mercy that is the first 4 steps of the ladder. It is mercy to be emptied out of your pride and brought to poverty of spirit. That's mercy. It's mercy to be brought to mourning over your spiritual condition, over missing the mark with your life. That's mercy, to be weeping there. It's mercy from God, the God that we forge our life on, to receive the grace of giving over control and power to Him who can actually control it. It is mercy to be made hungry and thirst after righteousness. So therefore, the one who's expected to show mercy is one who has already received it. We get to this rung of the ladder, and we're like, man, we really did. We've already received it from the mercy of all these other rungs. The mercy we show is an overflow of the mercy that we have received from our God, and it's abundant. Again, Spurgeon once explained the mercy of God this way. He said, God's mercy is so great that you may sooner drain the sea of its water or deprive the sun of its light or make space too narrow than diminish the great mercy of God. Once we have experienced the mercy of God, we cannot help but show it to others. And when we do that, we climb up the ladder another rung. Right? The ones who are honest with God are happy. That's another rung, right? It says, blessed are the pure in heart. Right now, we're really, as disciples of God, we're really moving into maturity here, right? Pure in heart does not mean that we magically become perfect. That is not biblical, nor that's what this means. This phrase referred to straightness, honesty. The idea is really of single, undivided heart and attention. Those who utterly are sincere and confident are not divided in their devotion. They're committed to forging that lifelong reliance on God. Right? Jesus is saying you want to be blessed, you want true happiness. Stop trying to be somebody else. Be totally and fully devoted to me. Quit wearing your masks. Forget what the world says. Forget what is trending on TikTok. Forget trying to be one person at work and one person at school and one person at church. Just be mine, he says. Mic drop after mic drop. He says, take the mask off and be totally and utterly committed to me. That is what you were created to be. That is your true identity. That's how you live an abundant, aggressive, adventurous life. That is how you are forged in that lifelong reliance on me. And then Jesus says, take that one step further and one step up the ladder. And he says, happy ones change the temperature in the room. Right? We read, blessed are the peacemaker. So it's all building. We're all stepping up the ladder. And he said, blessed are the peacemaker. Happy are the ones who change the temperature of the room. There are two kinds of people. There are thermometers and there are thermostats. There are thermometers and there are thermostats. And now what's a thermometer do? Right? It adjusts itself to the climate of the room. Right? And what does a thermostat do? Yeah. It sets the climate of the room, right? That's why I want lock boxes on these, so you guys quit hitting the buttons, right? All right, he's saying, don't be a thermometer, be a thermostat. Blessed are those who can walk into any situation and just change that climate because they're so full of the Spirit of God, because they have forged a lifelong reliance on me. All right, why do you think peacemakers are so far up the ladder? Is it because it requires a lot of spiritual maturity? Doesn't it? Right? And Jesus is saying, now that you are totally committed to me and trying to please, and you're not trying to please everyone else, let's start changing the world. You're focused. Right? You can tell when people have reached this rung of the ladder. You can just tell. There are people who just light up a room. You can tell they have the Spirit of God in their life, right? They're slow to speak. They're quick to listen. They rarely complain. They have a gentle spirit, but a powerful spirit about them at the same time, right? Christina, for example, my wife, next to Jesus, she's my role model. I don't know, that's weird. All right, her and Barton, they're up there. All right, but no, right, I want to be like her because she's a thermostat. She changes the temperature of the room. She giggles her way through life, yes. All right, the only time she's really in a bad mood is when she wakes up until about noon. But other than that, she's a joy bringer. She's a thermostat, not a thermometer. Right? It is sickening, really, right? She's a peacemaker. She's a bridge builder. She wants to bring people together to the table and for the glory of God. When she walks into a room, if the conversation is real negative, if it's biting and sarcastic, it will change automatically. And she may not even know that it was negative and biting and sarcastic, whatever. Just her spirit, which is the Spirit of God in her. She's just that kind of person. Blessed are you when you're like that, it says. And that gets us to the last rung of the ladder, doesn't it? Right? What is it in your Bibles? What does it say? Right? Happy are the persecuted. blessed are the persecuted. We get all the way to the top of the ladder. We're working our way up to find out how to achieve the beatitude, right? This happiness, to achieve true happiness, all that work for it to say what? Blessed are the persecuted. Hey, Jesus, did you get this wrong? All right? Did someone read your notes before you preach that sermon? That doesn't make sense, right? We're thinking happiness does not usually involve people saying horrible things about me or plotting against me. What gives, Jesus? Well, here's what we need to know. That phrase, blessed are the persecuted, had sort of become a common phrase among the Jews of that time. You can even say today, right, after this weekend's events. You see, they believed that those who were persecuted for following God's law, the ones in the Old Testament, would receive blessings in heaven. They said if you follow all the rules, if you check all the boxes, if you know all the theology, if you don't eat pork, and if you don't associate with the unclean, and you memorize the Torah, then you'll be rewarded. And Jesus says here, whoa, right? Blessed are those who are persecuted for my name, not the law, not the boxes they check, but my name. Me. Right? Don't miss this. Jesus is saying happiness is not found in only following the law, but also in knowing Jesus. Right? Look at this. Dig into this. Right? Grab a hold of this. Right? White knuckle it. Right? This is why these Beatitudes, right? This is why happiness is a ladder. Right? The first 4 steps, they're great. They're great, right? They were mic drops in their own right. They're wonderful. It's wonderful to know that we are sinners, that we are in need of God's grace, and to give Him control. All right? That's we have to do that. It's wonderful to hunger and to thirst to know Him. But we can do those things and still live the same unhappy life if we don't take these final steps. We don't go to the top of the ladder. You cannot just live your life with your head in a book, yelling from your safe, holy huddle about how the world is falling apart. Right? That will leave you feeling as unhappy as philosophers who study religion all over the world and who never really change their life because of their study. Right? So we cannot just stop on one rung or rung 4 of the ladder. We have to keep going. Right? And then there's this similar problem for the final 4 rungs of the ladder. Just like the first 4. Some Christ followers have a tendency to skip the first 4 and they just jump over to the next 4 of those rungs. Right? They don't need that first step. They just jump on up the ladder. It just leaves them with the acts of a Christian, but not the change of heart that someone who knows Jesus lives in. Does that make sense, right? So they end up acting like a Christian, but they don't know why. And they don't know what the goal is. They think it's just something nice to do. And so they do it. Jesus has a name for that, right? Whitewashed tomb. Right? You can't skip the first 4 if you want to be an authentic Christ follower, someone who wants to follow a lifelong reliance on God, to be forged. And you can't skip the next 4 if you want your life to shine before men. If you want to be a disciple who makes disciples so that they see your good works and they glorify our Father in heaven. So look, true happiness comes from both the heart change and the behavioral change. Heart change and our behavior, that's what the Beatitudes are. Right? Because here is what you will notice about this ladder if you just zoom out. All right? If you just zoom out and you look at this ladder, these Beatitudes, it really just reflects the steps of what we would call salvation. Isn't it? Right? First, we acknowledge our sin. We understand that we're broken, that we've missed the mark. And we're repenting from that. We're sorrowful because of that. We acknowledge that we need a Savior, and we invite Jesus into our life. We say, hey, take control. All right, we get baptized through the gift of the Holy Spirit. We get to know more and more, and we hunger more and more, and we thirst more and more for God. And as we drink of the living water and we eat of the bread of life, our actions change. You want to know how to achieve happiness? Forging a lifelong reliance on Jesus.